Good afternoon again. My name is Stuart Van Hooser. I'm the Deputy Chief of Cobb County Police Department. I'm over what I call all the fun stuff. We have another Deputy Chief that's over the precincts. So when you see a uniformed car traveling around responding to 911 calls and making traffic stops, that's his area. His name is Deputy Chief Jeff Adcock. He is out of town. We have another Deputy Chief, Scott Hamilton, who's over our administrative unit. And of course, we have the chief that's over all three of the deputy chiefs and the rest of the department. All the special operations units, like the K-9 unit. That's everybody's favorite. Look at this. I knew that would be a winner. Our fatality investigative unit, which is a very sad unit to be in. That's actually where Chief Cox spent a good bit of his career. The DUI task force, the homicide unit, the children's unit, another kind of heartbreaking unit, the narcotics unit, all the fun, interesting, the bomb team, all the neat stuff in the department. That's what I'm over. And one of the most exciting parts of that is our technology unit. And that is the workhorse of the technology unit, Captain Billy Mitchell, as the chief mentioned. He does all the work that you're about to see. And my goal today is fourfold, and we'll get to that in just a second. That's a picture. It really doesn't mean much, but I want you to focus on the top left picture, and I want you to look at that young man for me and realize that is that's a real person. It's not something we got off the internet. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the program. The rest of those are just little pictures because I'm not a good PowerPoint guy, and Captain Mitchell made a pretty PowerPoint for you guys. So our goals today. The first goal is just to let you know how we're using emerging technology. You are our customer, and you have a right to know what we're doing, not only with your funds, what we're doing with your safety. Are we taking it seriously? Are we not? Are we overstepping our bounds on privacy issues? We want to bring some balance to the national media coverage. Sometimes some of this technology, they will tell you half the story. Today, you'll hear the other half of the story that you will not hear in the media. Receive your concerns. If you are concerned about some of the technology that we're using, we want you to tell us those concerns. And actually, Captain Mitchell has some feedback forms. We're going to give one to each of you guys. We have pens. If you would be so kind as to fill that out at the end of this meeting, because we're going to tell you some of the safeguards we put in place, and we're going to tell you how this technology is used. So we want you to do that at the end, after the meeting is concluded. If you have questions, we'll hold those to the end. We'll have a whole section for any concerns that you have, questions, and answers. The last thing that we want to do is show you how we partner with our community. And we've been doing some very, very neat things with partnering with our community that have made a real difference in the safety of our community. Before we dive into the technology, I want to address how things are going with crime, because I understand with all the media reports that there may be some concerns about how safe you are in Cobb County. It is true that we have had some increases nationally and regionally in violent crime. Absolutely 100% true. We cannot deny that. Oddly enough, what we have found in our crime trends that have been very, very consistent since COVID started is we have seen an increase in violent crime. We've also seen a decrease in what we call stranger-to-stranger crime. In other words, your house getting broken into, your car getting broken into, and you don't know who did it. We've seen a decrease in almost every stranger-to-stranger crime except auto theft. And we can't really explain that one. We do have some theories. Auto thefts are up a little bit. Every other stranger-to-stranger crime is down. That's great news. Our violent crime that is up is typically a known offender. It's a personal issue where there is an actual ongoing dispute, or it could be an ongoing domestic dispute. Those are very, very difficult for the police department to influence. We do have some very strong theories on why those are up. That's not what this meeting's about. What I wanted to do is bring you context to some of the increases in crime that you're hearing about on the media and let you know that you're safe in Cobb County. You need to still be safe and be cognizant and use all safety precautions that are always recommended, but you should not be walking around in fear in Cobb County. our crime trends have really not changed very much. We have several areas of the county that are more dangerous than others. These areas in this community have not changed to any significant degree. That's really my message to you on that. And here are some stats you can see here, and I'll just briefly show you what we've got going on. These numbers, if it's red, that means they're up. Green means they're down. And what we see, homicides, I can tell you that almost, well, actually, I think 100% of our homicides last year were known offenders. We had a couple of domestic-related ones. The rest of them were gang-related or crime-related. For example, drug dealers robbing other drug dealers and getting killed in the process. So those are not random people being killed on the streets. I don't think we even had one of those last year nor this year. They're known offenders. The same thing with rapes. Despite what you might think about rapes, almost every single time that is a known offender. If we get an unknown offender rape, that is a huge big deal in Cobb County. We've had one that I can remember. We solved that one in an amazing way in about 3 hours. We take those very seriously. Most of the other ones involve someone they know. That's not something that your average person walking around on the street should be too concerned about, because we don't see stranger-to-stranger attacks and sexual assaults very often, extremely rare. Same thing with aggravated assaults. That's basically an attempted murder. That's a shooting, a stabbing, something like that. That's a personal crime. Usually there's an underlying dispute there. Very difficult for us to control that, and not something where you're walking with your family down the street and somebody suddenly attacks you for no reason. So, despite the fact that we have some increases in crime, relatively speaking, Cobb County is essentially the same safety-wise for you guys. So don't be terrified about what you're hearing on the news. This department takes things very seriously, and we are still doing our job, and we'll get into that a little bit later. This is what the stereotypical picture of a government employee. And I'm going to tell you something, that is not true at all. This department is working very hard, and our caseload is getting higher every year, not lower, and we work hard to maintain what we've been doing, and really what that leads to is why we use technology. We have provided a high quality service to this community since I've been here, 31 years. We have had the lowest crime in Metro Atlanta for the entire time. We still do. Chief sent us an email the other day about our crime and compared it to all the other jurisdictions in Metro Atlanta, and per capita ours is extremely lower than the other agencies, and they are great police agencies as well. But Cobb County is different and special, and we have always provided high quality to you guys, and we're very supported by Commissioner Gambrill and the rest of the commissioners, and that's very appreciated, and that's really how we're able to do this. But we want to provide great quality, but when we have an increased demand on our people, obviously that creates a problem. If the cases are piling up on us and we have the same number of people, it's pretty difficult to actually continue to solve these cases. So our staff's limited. As our work increases, quality often decreases, often leading to having to choose one over the other. We can do a lot and not do a very good job at it, or we can take a few cases and do a really good job at them. So how do we fix that? One of the ways we fix that is with technology. Being efficient is just achieving maximum productivity with minimal wasted effort or expense. So innovation breeds efficiency. And everything that Captain Mitchell and the rest of this department is utilizing with technology is how we are actually maintaining our high quality and also adjusting to our higher quantity. However, it can go too far. So we want you to understand that we recognize that efficiency and technology are things we try to achieve, but we do have our limits. And we recognize that there are limits, and we recognize we can go too far with some of this technology, and we're going to talk about that today. So what are we using right now? License plate recognition. If there's an asterisk by it, we're going to talk about it a little deeper than the other subjects. We're using drones. NIBIN, that's a ballistic technology where we can link shell casings and rounds from different crime scenes together, and it develops leads. We'll talk about that. Stop Arm School Bus Safety Program. That helps our kids who are getting on and off the bus in the afternoon and in the morning. Facial recognition. That's probably a dirty word to a lot of people because it does not get any balanced media coverage. We're going to talk about that. We have a voluntary camera registry, and we also have doorbell programs and security camera programs. We're going to talk about that. So those are the things we are using now. What are we thinking about using? What are we likely to be using in the next 6 months to the next, 18 months? School zone speed enforcement. That's to help protect our kids not while they're getting on and off the bus, but while they're at school, coming in and going out. We had a tragic accident on a Veterans Memorial a couple of years ago that involved a crossing guard and some dismemberment. It was very, very ugly. Real-Time Crime Center. This is the one that Captain Mitchell's really been spearheading for a while, and it's we're near ready to actually ask the commissioners to help us with this. And they're familiar with what that is, and we're going to teach you what it is if you don't already know. And these two things here, machine learning cameras and alerts and gunshot detection, are two things that would be incorporated into that Real-Time Crime Center. So we'll talk about those things. Here's some questions that people have had over the years about some of the technology that we're using. How is it used? How is it stored? How is it protected? So I'm going to go over some of the safeguards that we as a department do for you and do for ourselves, because there's nobody inside our police department that wants to live in a police state. There's nobody inside our police department that wants to be spied upon by the government. So we recognize that because we are the community too. We live here. So with license plate recognition and facial recognition, one of the things we do is we consult with you. We consult with our community and ask them for their input. These are the things I'm worried about. These are the things I'm concerned about. These are the things I'd like to see in your policy. We did that 2 years ago in this room. It was a huge turnout, and we actually fielded questions, and we got written feedback from the audience, which we're going to get from you guys tonight. And we use that information to help build our policies that control what we can and cannot do. We require training before use, obviously, and when we have our policies and the constraints that we put on our officers, we train them. This is what you must do before they can use it. This is big. With license plate recognition and facial recognition, and really every case that we make, we require additional evidence. We don't take a face and find another face that the algorithm says, hey, this is the same person, and then go get a warrant for that person. We corroborate, and we're forced by policy to corroborate that information to make sure that it's more than just an algorithm telling us that somebody did it. License plate recognition data. The state will allow us to keep that for 30 months. We keep it for 24 months in one system, and that's our smaller system. Our bigger system, it's 30 days. We'll talk a little bit more about that bigger system later. You can only search these databases for law enforcement reasons, and you have to document that reason inside the system. You have to put a case number in. So you can give us a reason all day long, but if we can't go and see a case number to verify that reason's legitimate, then what good does it do? You could just say, hey, I was investigating a shooting, but we make them put in a case number so that we know it's a real case. Every now and then we have some that do not require a case number. That's because, let's say we had a lookout on a car from Sandy Springs on a shooting that just occurred. The officers will put that tag number into the license plate recognition system to see where that person lays their head at night, where they might be going. They don't have the case number at that moment, but it's very important for them to act very quickly so they can intercept that car. But they will put that in the explanation so that we understand. We audit this every year. We audit LPR and facial recognition to make sure that our officers are doing this. We do a sample audit, and if we do see violations or questions, if we have questions, we'll do an investigation to find out a little bit more about that case to verify that it's being used properly. If we see a violation, typically what we do is retrain and give them a written warning the first time. Because a lot of times, most of the time, well, every time so far, we haven't seen an intentional act where somebody is trying to violate somebody's rights. We just see a little bit of sloppy paperwork. The only thing we look at with facial recognition are bookend photos. If you have been arrested, you could potentially be in the database that we use, but if you have not been arrested, we won't see you. For example, we don't scour social media. The system that we use does not do that. So we only use bookend photos, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also require a secondary peer review. So if Captain Mitchell identifies somebody, he has to get a second person to actually agree. And there's actually specific training on how we make sure that it is the right person. He's got to have a peer review that and agree that that's the right person. Then after that, you have to have a supervision review the case and ensure that that is a proper case. We do not use facial recognition in crowds. If you go to the Braves game, we are not videoing you and running your face through a facial recognition program to see if you're wanted. We don't do that. I'm very objective when we evaluate this technology, and I have seen some good and some bad in all this technology, and I'm personally not in a place where I would be comfortable doing that, and we don't do it. Let's get down to individual things that we're doing. License plate recognition. I'll tell you really quickly what it is, but I think everybody probably knows. It used to not be a household word, and many in the public did not know what it was, but I'm going to explain to you what it is. This is what it actually looks like. It's a camera. Right here's the camera here, and you've got cameras on police cars. That camera is either it has a computer with it, or it sends the information to another computer. It is trained to recognize a vehicle's tag number. When it sees one, it will take a photograph of that. It will take those digits and interpret them, and then it will send them to a database where we have stolen cars, wanted people, known or suspected gang members, known or suspected terrorists, missing persons. If it is one of those, it will send a message to a police officer in his car, on his computer, that at this location, it usually takes about 30 seconds, at this location, this car, it'll send a picture of the car and a picture of the tag, past this camera, and he is a wanted person, or he is in a stolen car. So we go to that area and we try to search for that person. That's what a license plate recognition system does. So imagine this. You have a license plate recognition camera at the front of your subdivision. It's like having a police officer there, except he can memorize every single lookout we've ever had. He can memorize every single stolen car around the entire state. And he doesn't forget it. He never takes a break. He never sleeps. He works on Christmas. He works on New Year's Eve. And when he sees something, the only thing he can't do is make an arrest. He can call his buddy, though, really, really fast, and his buddy and all of his buddies will come out there to your subdivision. He's still driving to your house to conduct the burglary. But because this officer, who never sleeps and remembers every lookout, knows that that car belongs to a burglar that we're looking for, all his buddies come and capture the man. I'm going to show you some stuff that has blown us away with this technology. I don't think it's any big surprise that sometimes we get only part of the story from people. And you may have heard some bad things about license plate recognition and facial recognition. We're going to talk about some of those things. One of the things they said, and this was several years ago, we had quite the fight to bring this technology to Cobb County because there were concerns about it, and those concerns were actually valid, very valid concerns. It helped us make a program that was fair. but still effective. So we love those concerns, and we want to hear from people that have them because it helps us build a stronger program. But here were some of the concerns. Tracks my movement. That is false. Records my face. That is false. Identifies me in my vehicle. That is false. Used to over-police an area. That's a misnomer. And what that misnomer is this. We put police officers and resources where we have the most victims. And if we don't do that, there is something wrong with us. We don't value our community when we don't put the resources where they are needed to protect people. And that's what we do. So yes, we do use technology in our higher crime areas at a higher rate. It is true, because they deserve it. Our community deserves that. And that's what we do. We're going to show you some of that in a few minutes. This is just an example of one of the articles. This is about license plate readers. You're being tracked. The truth is you can't track it. We only have 7 mobile units. Those are the ones on the police cars. We now have 53 fixed units. That sounds like a lot, but it's extremely small. Most big agencies have many, many more than that. And the way we use it, we will put 5 or 6 cameras in one very small area. There are reasons for this, to cover a very violent area, because it helps us to be able to capture them without chases. That's the bottom line. We do not want to have a lot of chases from this, so we put a dense amount of cameras in a small area because it helps the officers to determine where they went. So it's 53 that we have, and it's impossible to track somebody. You might pass one of these cameras, I don't know, once every 2 or 3 weeks maybe. You know, that's an absolute guess because we're not allowed to search it without a police reason and without a case number, but that's my guess. So we can't track you. Faces are not recorded. I'll show you pictures in a second that'll prove that. Your plates are not linked to you. If you pass an LPR, it does not send us a message that you passed this location, ever. It doesn't do that. It doesn't even send us a message that this tag passed that location. The only time it sends us a message is if that tag is one of the wanted people or stolen cars, if that makes sense. Now, we can search that database, and if we needed to search for a particular tag, we can. So we can go back in there. But in those cases, we have to say, this is what we're investigating, and this is the case number. So it has to be, we have to have a legitimate reason. And really, the only really alerts that we get on our stationary units are for serious crimes, missing persons, terrorists, stolen cars, wanted people, that kind of thing. We're not, what I'm saying is we're not writing no insurance tickets on these LPRs. Our cars actually do get those alerts, but I don't think we write a lot of tickets on that. In fact, our car LPRs are not very useful. So this is what we actually see. This is what the camera looked like. So if you see those, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a license plate recognition camera. This is what we see. This is exactly what happens when we get a stolen car. It's exactly what they see. It says it's a stolen vehicle. It gives the description of the car. It gives a picture of the tag here, and it gives an overall picture of the truck so that the officers responding know what the truck looks like. That's it. It doesn't even tell us the victim's name. It doesn't tell us the suspect's name. That's all we get. And there's no faces. I guess it's potential that you could see the outline of a face every now and then, but I don't think that I've ever seen a face in any of these pictures that we've ever seen. So that's really all we see. Now, here's the stuff that I don't believe the media tells us about. Does anybody know who Vester Flanagan is? I asked this at a lot of meetings. Nobody's ever known who he is except one person. Nobody knows that name, do you? You'll remember the case. This is the case. A live newscast with this is the reporter and this is the cameraman. It was the reporter and the cameraman. A man with a gun approaches them during a live broadcast and executes both of them on camera. Do y'all remember this case? I've got a video here. I'm not going to play the video, but A very, very sad case, and it shocked America. And this was back, gosh, I'd say 2013. You know how that man was captured? An LPR hit. A female state trooper was going up the interstate. She heard the lookout. She pulled over. She got into her license plate recognition database. She put the tag in there. Craziest thing, she had just passed it 3 minutes before on the interstate. So she just sat there and waited. And he passes her, and they pull him over. I think he might have committed suicide. That's how that man was caught. But you never heard about it. But if you are a news hound, you probably did hear about how terrible license plate recognition was. So that's the rest of the story on that. This is just a local story. That was a national story. Let me tell you how we've used it. We had a young man, I think he was 17, who was targeting elderly females, and he was assaulting them, and he was taking their purses. And he did this at the Walmart on the East-West Connector at Powder Springs. One of our detective sergeants got angry about that, and he decided to go into the flock LPR system and put the tag number in because a witness got a tag number. He discovered that this young man frequented a park. We went to the park. We found the car. We couldn't tell who it was because it was a large number of people playing basketball. They tricked him into believing that his car was being towed for reasons unrelated to that, to identify him. They made an announcement, hey, this car's getting towed. The young man came out, and we were able to make an arrest. So that's just one of many examples. Can y'all see this picture? Do y'all see the gun? This is in one of our parks in Cobb County. The Parks Department got cameras in the parks that were experiencing high volumes of crime. They weren't used to getting this kind of crime. They were used to having backpack blowers stolen, and it was things like that. This particular night, that gentleman and 3 others went into this park, and they robbed somebody. They carjacked them. The flock camera is a license plate recognition camera, but it also takes photographs of movement. So if it sees a person on a bicycle, it'll actually take that picture. If it sees a person, it'll take that picture. Even if it sees a dog, it'll take that picture because it is prompted by motion. It took this picture for us, and it gave us a lead on that carjacking. Within 2 hours of that carjacking, we had a home invasion homicide about a mile from this park. Turns out it was the same 4 guys. We were able to use this and other information to figure out who this man was. This is 1 week. This is one very small unit in Cobb County. Stolen car arrest, stolen car arrest, stolen car arrest, stolen car recovery. They didn't get the bad guy on this one. Sometimes they run, whatever. We don't always catch them. That's in 1 week. That is a, 8-man unit. That's our K9 unit. Very small unit. It's not their primary mission. Their primary mission is not to patrol. Their primary mission is to assist officers who need a K9. That is truly amazing. If you're in the business, you recognize how crazy that is. It is really staggering. What I want to stress to you is the people that are stealing these cars are typically not your teenager who's borrowed mom's car without telling her. It's typically and very, very often gang-related, and it's also related to other crimes that they are committing, especially entering autos. They'll do some burglaries. Occasionally they'll do armed robberies. They'll take a stolen car to go commit another crime. So these are, you've heard people probably say that a very small percentage of our community commits a very large percentage of our crime. Stolen cars are how they do it. It's one of the, and that's not to say that everybody that we get in a stolen car is a habitual criminal, but I'm telling you, I would guess that 75% of them are. So these are extremely good arrests. The very first homicide perpetrator that was ever captured using this technology with this company was in Cobb County on the 19th of November 2019, about 6 months after we started this program. It was actually a Marietta arrest. Happened on 41 at Franklin. It actually came out as a stolen tag. That's all it was. The car ran, the driver ran on foot, they captured him, he was wanted for murder in another state. But as you can see here, this week, this is another week, we got an aggravated assault, intent to murder, a homicide suspect, a serial commercial burglar, and a stolen car with 2 arrests. These are not normal for us to see in 1 week, even department-wide. Exculpatory evidence. LPR can set people free because it can prove people are innocent when they've been wrongfully convicted. In Massachusetts, I'll really quickly tell you this story. The police arrested the wrong guy for murder. LPR set him free because it put him at a convenience store in another jurisdiction at the time of the murder. It set an innocent man free. I talked to the person who essentially made that arrest. When he told me this story, he cried. He cried because he had locked up the wrong person. He had jumped to conclusions and he didn't do a thorough. He did not check the LPR database. The defense attorney did. He dropped the ball. So it really bothered him, but we can use it for exculpatory. We can make sure that we've got the right person. Okay, while I was putting this together for y'all yesterday, I was finding a picture of a young lady, which I'll show you in a minute. While I'm doing it, I get a page from Precinct 4 commander who said, hey, we just got a homicide perpetrator off of our Flock LPR camera. You know, he said, a little good news. We just got a homicide perpetrator. I told you stolen cars were hard to find. Raise your hand, officers, if you've ever run a tag and it came back to a wanted person for homicide. Ever. You have? You got behind the car, you ran the tag, and it was wanted for homicide. Okay, good job. I've run thousands and thousands and thousands of tags. But Ben Cohen, he is amazing. That's the problem. How many times, Ben? One time in 23 years. I've never had it happen. Captain Mitchell's never had it happen. Now, I'm surprised Chief Cox hadn't, because he's been working here for, 86 years, Chief? 89 years. And hey, you too. Has it ever happened to you, Deputy Newell? No. Okay, so it is difficult to do this. They got one yesterday, and actually it was Tuesday. Here's what I was looking for as I was putting this PowerPoint together when this came out. I left my office and I went down to the officers to see this arrest and talk to them and congratulate them. But this is what I was looking for. This lady was shot 19 times on April 26th in Florida. Her body was dumped near Orlando. It was a whodunit. They weren't sure who did it. They weren't even sure who she was because she was decomposed by the time they found her. So as this unfolded, they realized that they had a suspect. They put that suspect into the database where we store wanted suspects and suspects in crimes. That database, of course, is hooked to our LPR program. The LPR program told us, and this is where I was talking about earlier when I said our community policing. We can do community programs without policing. We can go have cookies with people, but we're not policing. When we are community policing, we are making people safer together with our community. We are policing with our community. We are members of our community, and we want this to be a safe place to live for us and our families too. What happened with this one, we had a homeowners association that donated 8 license plate recognition cameras to us. We strategically located those in areas where we had high crime. One of those cameras that was donated, we didn't buy this. The police department did not ask for this and buy it. This was given to us by our community. That camera alerted on this lady's killer. She's a 29-year-old mom of 3. Here are some quotes from her dad. And this is before Dad knew. Well, we hadn't caught him at this point. These are what he was posting on the internet while he's still at large. The first one says, I'll read it to you. Her name is Valerie Sacco, I believe. His name on this post is Dad Sacco. And this is what he says: waking up in the morning, mothers with their children, breathing, the sun shining, rainy days, dancing and dreaming, Daddy loves you forever, baby. That's what he posted. That was a few weeks before this post. This post said, my daughter, my baby girl, love of my life. Words cannot begin to describe my grief and how I miss you. I can only say that you are in my heart. Your children, my grandchildren, will be cared for and justice will be served. That's a dad mourning for his daughter and for the mother of his grandchildren. And look at those beautiful babies. That LPR, that donation from that HOA, and here's where I'm going to get on my soapbox. We have all the technology we want to have. We can have it all until you have brave men and women who will go out there and put their lives on the line to help a dad like that. That technology is useless. It's useless. We had a group of officers who found out about this when that alert came in. They worked 23 straight hours. 23 straight hours trying to get this guy. They got him. And really, nobody thanked him. We did. Nobody else knew about it because the media won't tell you this. So thank you for coming, because we got heroes out there that are doing an incredible job. We got an incredible commission that is supporting us, put us on a really nice step and grade plan to keep our officers here. Our officers are heroes. They're working in this environment and they haven't given up, and they're righting a lot of wrongs. And here's what's really scary. This whole program in some places has been outlawed. They will not let their agencies use license plate recognition. I got article after article about them not letting them use it or handicapping it so bad it's pretty much useless. All right, let's get on to something happier. Drones. We're using drones. What we're using drones for right now mostly, is predominantly with our traffic investigators when they're investigating fatalities. They'll take the drone up, they'll get an overhead of the scene. That drone has technology in it. It can do a scale diagram, it can do animation, it can recreate the accident for court purposes and for civil purposes. It's really cool stuff. They can do that in a very short amount of time. We used to literally shut roads down and put bodies out there for hours and hours and hours. It was very dangerous for the police officers, very inconvenient for you guys, and so it was just time consuming. And they hand drew a scale diagram, which was extremely manpower intensive. This is just a great, great thing that we do with the drones. The second thing we do, and this is we talked a little bit about canines earlier. You know, when the police are scared, you know who we call? The canine unit and the SWAT unit, and we have a unit called Viper. When the police are scared, that's who we call. And I mean that jokingly. The police aren't really scared, but these units are called when things are very tense. For example, when our officer was shot, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before that, we had an officer shot right up here on 92 at 41. When that happened, we have a canine unit that can track him, but it's extremely dangerous because the man is armed, he is barricaded somewhere or hiding somewhere, and he just sits and waits for the officer. And you've seen 2 dogs in Metro Atlanta shot in the last 5 years. It's extremely dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous things that we do. And usually a SWAT or Viper officer or even a patrol officer will cover the canine and the handler, the canine handler. It's a police officer that specializes in training and using canines. What we do now is we'll take a drone up before we'll send that canine in, and we'll try to locate him with infrared. It's very difficult to do on a hot day. It's a little bit easier to do during cool weather. It takes forever for us to get a helicopter, but it kind of replaces the helicopter. Now that night we called the helicopter and we brought out the drones, and neither one of them were successful. So we had to send the canines in, SWAT team guys and the precinct guys were on the perimeter. We eventually were able to capture him the old-fashioned way, but we are using drones for that, basically to spare risking an officer's life in hopes that we will find, the location of the suspect and be able to call him out. It's also much safer for the suspect because if he knows he's captured, he's more likely to give up than to confront the officers and then get hurt or killed. NIBIN. This is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. What it is basically is we fingerprint shell casings and bullets that we get off scenes. We get a unique identifier for each one of them, and what that helps us do is to link a drive-by shooting here to a homicide in Atlanta, for example. That's something that's fairly new. I think we started that program about 1.5 years ago with the ATF. It cost you nothing. We've put staff that we already had in place on this, so we didn't really I don't think we even had to hire anybody. So this is something that the ATF helped us with, and it's been extremely productive for us. Some concerns that people had was that this was an invasion of privacy because we were going to start categorizing everybody's weapons. The only type of weapon that we categorize is a crime weapon. If it's not involved in a crime, we do not test that. The other thing people say is that it's very expensive. It didn't cost Cobb County a penny. ATF is the one that is doing this grant program with us, and as long as we do a good job with it, I feel like we'll probably be in good shape to stay in that program. They said that it wasn't a very effective program. We found that it is very effective. Just for an example, we had a 5-year-old shot inside his home. We were not able to actually get the evidence that we needed, although we had a suspect. We later found that suspect. He had a gun on him. We tested that gun. Lo and behold, it was the gun that shot the 5-year-old. We were able to make an arrest. This is cool. In Macon, Georgia, a young man was having a domestic dispute with his wife. And within a few hours, she was deceased. They found 9mm casings in the area of her body. She was killed in downtown Macon, and he had a 9mm. They arrested him, and he spent several months in jail, professing his innocence. He was innocent, and the reason that they found out was because Macon and the ATF started a program like we started. Actually, this happened about the time we were starting our program. Somebody found a gun just south of Atlanta on a gentleman who was in a park after dark. That's the only reason. They arrested him because I think he had an outstanding warrant. They took the gun, they put it into the NIBIN program. It linked to that homicide. It turns out he was in Macon. He was downtown Macon. They made the arrest. They let this guy go. And what was really cool is to read and watch his interview because nobody believed him. That's some bad luck to be having a domestic dispute with your wife. The neighbors heard it. You have a 9mm, and within a few hours, she's deceased by a 9mm. That's some bad luck. And I don't blame people for not believing him, but it's good to see that this technology that sometimes people are critical of can actually help set people free. And it also, here, I love this. I always ask God to reveal who would kill my daughter and why. Today I am relieved to know that he is behind bars. I never gave up but kept the faith. It's just nice to see that closure for the family. And that's, as I told you before, that's very, very rare that you have a stranger-on-stranger homicide. That is very, very unique and unusual. Our Stop Arm program, this is the one that I told you about where kids are getting on and off the bus. What we have, it looks like this. It's a little camera. Has anybody seen these on the buses in Cobb County? Do y'all know about this program? Essentially what happens is the stop arm goes out, which means everybody is supposed to stop. If you pass that, the camera will take a picture. It will basically go into a database where it sends it to us. We review the camera footage to make sure that they really did run it. And then we generate a ticket and we send, it's really actually a civil ticket. We send that civil ticket to the driver so that they're held accountable. These are the stats we've done for the last few years. And what you can see from this, it's not a rubber stamp. We do actually review those, and we do actually throw out about a third of those tickets because we don't think it was blatant enough or clear enough for us to make that. But this, and we'll talk about the other program in just a second, the school speed zone program are very effective at compliance, because when you do a public campaign, people know about it, and even most of y'all knew about it, and that's what I was really hoping to see. If you know about that, you're far less likely to do what this guy did. I don't know if I can play this, but I'll try. I don't know it's going to let me. You can see the girl crossing the street. And that's really not one of our bad ones. I've seen them way worse than that. Yeah, it's a little spooky. And we've had, this program started when we lost a 9-year-old girl. That's how this program started. We had one guy that spearheaded it. His name was Hawk Hagerback. He's not with us anymore. Me and him were hired together, but he retired before I did. All right, so facial recognition. This might be, one that you really have heard about in the media, because it's very much a lot of bad rap on this, and rightfully so. There are some things that we even were concerned about with facial recognition, so we did a pretty hard scrub on this before we elected to use it. But facial recognition is math. Y'all know the old, we call them 6-packs, where you're the victim and we have 6 people. You look at them and you pick out the one that did it, right? Y'all seen that on TV shows, and maybe the lineup, yes ma'am. And there were even live lineups where the gentleman would stand there and you would pick him out. That's the lineup. Now, we've been doing that forever, and nobody's really had a problem with it. We've misidentified a lot of people over the years with that. That is the number one problem when we look backwards and we say, this person was innocent, what happened, where did we go wrong? That misidentification is the number one problem. What this does is actually really neat, because it helps us to identify people, but it also helps us to make sure we have the right person. Because we can take a video from the actual crime scene, let's say it's a burglary, and we have a picture of the face of the person that did it. Now we have a suspect over here. If we have a picture of our suspect and a picture of the man from the actual burglary, we can actually do a mathematical calculation through this to see if it's him. Because it will not line up if it's not, even though they appear similar to the naked eye. There are slight differences that these algorithms will identify that the human eye will not. And that's for victims too. Victims with a pure heart do these misidentifications, and the police have done it as well. So what we've got here is an actual algorithm. It's very scientific. And yes, there were problems when this came out initially, and there still are, and they're still refining it, just like license plate recognition. That's been around since the early 2000s. We looked at it for 8 years before we actually started using it. We did the same thing with facial recognition. We've been watching this for at least 10 years to see, is it refined enough so that we have enough trust in it to use it to a degree? And right now where we are, we're using it to a degree. So facial recognition, basically, all we're doing is we're taking a picture of a suspect of a crime, we're putting that into a database that contains pictures of people who have been arrested for crimes, and it is actually measuring things on the face to see mathematically if they can find the same features in another person. Having said that, race and sex don't matter to this. If you have the same measurements on your face, it will identify you as a potential suspect. So we could have somebody with a face like mine that's a completely different race than me, and it will actually show that this could be a candidate. We don't make cases based on a match. All that tells us is it's a starting point. We actually had a person, it was a female, that was wanted in a crime. We did not know who she was. We put her into the facial recognition system. It gave us a male. Well, it gave us a bunch of people, but it gave us a male. It turns out it was a male. We did our research and we found out that he had just dressed up like a female so that nobody could determine who he was. It was a very crazy case. In fact, I wish I had it to show you, because I do have it, but I didn't put it in this PowerPoint. So what I'm saying is it's math. It's math. It is not the police saying, I think that's him. It's not a victim saying, that looks like him. This is math. Some of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier, some of the things that you'll hear in the media is that it sifts social media, and that is true. Some systems do sift social media. We elect not to do that. We don't do that, and our system doesn't do that. Scans and identifies you in public, we don't do that either. Like I said before, if you're going to the Braves game, we are not scanning to see if we can find a wanted person there. I have read many articles and seen many statistics on that, and that is not a good idea. There are misidentifications and there are detentions from those misidentifications that to me should not be ever made. We do not use those, and the chief would not, even if I tried, would not do it. I don't want to be scanned and detained when I'm an innocent person, so we have limited our use of that. There are articles that literally say there's a 96% error rate. That is true too. You know why? Because when we put this face in, it gives us back a whole bunch of people, and it can only be one person. So when you say there's a 96% error rate, all the machine is telling us is that these are people with similar measurements on their face. It's not saying this guy did it or this guy did it. It's just simply giving us a list to start with. And so that's what we start with. It's biased. There are some studies done on some systems, and each one of them, it depends on how the machine learns. If you train a machine with mostly white people, it will do a better job with white people. And how you train it, how the machine learns, is where they're going to shine the most. And what happened in the early days of facial recognition is they did not really know that. They did not consider that. So there were differences actually in some of the systems that could be more accurate for one race than another. What we have found actually is with most of ours, it seems to be identifying Caucasians. I'm not sure we've had, we may have had one facial recognition alert or arrest with somebody other than Caucasian. I'm not sure. But here again is some of the things that you'll read about facial recognition. These are just the basic headlines. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'll tell you this, what it results in is people outlawing the use of facial recognition in their areas. And that's a shame, because you can actually control what the police can do with it and still take advantage of the good parts of facial recognition, and that's what we try to do here with your guys' help. Here's another one. Cambridge becomes the largest Massachusetts city to ban facial recognition. You're hearing them doing it a lot in California. So how we do it, we basically have one contracted database, and it has bookend photos. We do not scour newspaper articles. We don't scour social media posts. We don't scour the internet. We have one database. It has bookend photos. We don't scan the general public. We've already talked about that. We require a case number. We require a law enforcement reason, and we audit it. Cases not made on facial recognition match alone. In other words, if it tells me your guy looks like this guy, we don't go get a warrant. We make sure he was there. We make sure that we do an interview with him. If he trips up in his interview, he lies about this, he lies about that, or he gives us a confession, we understand that we have the right person. So it's just a lead for us, if that makes sense. We don't take a warrant without ensuring that that is the right person. This guy, Maximiliano Mejia, however you pronounce it, he followed a young lady in New York City home for 45 minutes at night. This is one of those stranger-to-stranger assaults that we don't see very often, and even New York City doesn't see that often. It's a very concerning case. He did not know her. He attacked her. He dragged her into a secluded area. He began to disrobe her. She begged him and begged him and begged him, and he stopped. He did not finish what he began to do. This is going to go to a point you made, sir. He was out on bond for raping a 70-year-old woman. I think he was 29 years old. Within 24 hours from a surveillance camera close to the location where she was assaulted, they were able to get a face, New York City police. they were able to identify him from his bookend photo from that arrest of that 70-year-old rape victim. They identified him within 24 hours and got him into custody within 1 day. You wouldn't have done that without facial recognition. It wouldn't have happened. We may have eventually identified him, but we certainly wouldn't have gotten him off the streets that quickly. Here's the very, very first case we ever put into the system. We were testing it to see if it worked. This young man right here, this is a picture from the video surveillance, and this is really the only thing we do with facial recognition. If we have an unknown suspect from a video camera of a burglary, which that's what this is, but we can't identify him, we'll put him into the facial recognition database to see if maybe the algorithm can give us a few people to pick from. So he was wanted in, I don't know, 4 or 5 other agencies, and all of our CIU detectives, all of our detectives that were at each of the precincts, they knew this, and everybody was trying to identify this guy. We put him in here, and lo and behold, we got that face, and some more faces, plenty of faces. Like I said, the 96% error rate, if they give you 150 to choose from, obviously they're not all him. Which one of these two do you think it is? The second guy, right? What I was telling you earlier about it's a mathematical equation, it doesn't know that he's young. So it gives us this guy because he's got similar measurements on the face. This is him. And then, of course, what you do then is we do a whole bunch of trickery to put him down to figure out where he was on the night of this particular burglary. We get that information. We have ways of doing that legally through subpoenas and through search warrants. We then call him in, we interview him, we find out if he's going to tell us the truth. He may not. We then compare notes with these other agencies. We see where he was on those nights, and we're able to basically clear all these cases out in just a few seconds from this facial recognition. That was our first one. And I don't know what the rate of success is on facial recognition, but I do know it's fairly low. When you put one in to a database like ours, it's not a high rate of success. That was our second one. That's who we were looking for, and she was wanted in Rome, she was wanted everywhere, but nobody knew who she was. Exactly the same case, except she was a fraud perpetrator that was connected to entering autos. They were breaking into cars, they would get your identification, and then they would start using your bank cards and stuff. Turns out that we were able to identify her and then link it to a very, very, very large East Coast gang that operates up and down the East Coast and really make an incredible multi-jurisdictional case with this evidence. And here's one of the articles that cited some of the great work of our detectives. It's funny though, they said Cobb County Police broke the case open with a positive identification. We used facial recognition. That's how we did it. Y'all remember I introduced you to this young man earlier? His name is Dwayne. It's actually, this is him. This is him right here. This guy kidnapped Dwayne, and this was a stranger-to-stranger crime. And I was the precinct commander at this precinct when this happened. And our homicide unit is so amazing. Sometimes they solve every single case in the year. Last year they solved every case they had. It's unheard of. They do an amazing job. This case and one other case from my precinct when I was a precinct major went unsolved, and we never solved them. But we had such a great picture of our suspect. This is our suspect right here. We put that on the news. For some reason, the detectives thought he was from South Georgia. They put it out on the news down there. We put it out on social media, and we would do that like once a year, trying to solve this case. This was a 33-year-old guy. He worked in Gwinnett County, I think. He had to take the bus a couple of times to get to work. He worked in a factory. He was not well off. He was relatively poor. And he was walking to the bus stop. It was about 5:30 in the morning, I believe, when he was actually picked up. And literally, he ran from these people. They chased him down and put him in the back of a white van. It's exactly what you hear about, in the movies. They put him in the back of a white van. They took him to this ATM machine where we got this picture. They forced him to get out his money. He didn't get out all of his money. And when he didn't get out all of his money, they had a discussion in the van. There were three suspects. They had a discussion in the van. Two of them wanted to kill him. One of them did not want to. They ended up killing him. They dumped his body out in a kind of a remote area. We did not find him for 3 or 4 days. When we backtracked everything, we got this photograph. It's really the only good lead we had. Years. I think it was 4 years. We would put this out over and over and over. I would keep reminding them, hey, have you solved it? Can we do anything with it? We were testing this facial recognition system in 7 seconds. 7 seconds. We identified this young man. There's his face. There he is. He was arrested in Alabama the day after the homicide in a stolen white van that he had killed a 14-year-old boy in South Georgia. They stole this van to get away. They came to Cobb County. They did this robbery. They killed that man. They went to Alabama. The police chased him for a stolen car. They didn't realize he had done homicides. Nobody ever knew. But it took us 7 seconds to solve it. It was an amazing thing. And it was such closure for our detectives because they had been working this case. They never forgot it. And it was just a great thing to do. That's just to make you laugh after another sad story. It's a donut joke for police officers. So how can we partner with you guys? And here's where we're going to go into a little bit about our, this will kind of segue into the Real-Time Crime Center. What we want you guys to help us do is develop leads. We can have a security camera picture of a person. Doesn't help us much. The single biggest thing we need is a tag number. The second thing we need is a face, a good picture of a face. As you can see, we can use our database. Our database is being improved. It's not very good right now, if I was to be totally honest with you. The sheriff's office is partnering with us so that we can get all the local bookend photos, which we don't have right now, and that will vastly improve our facial recognition program. But we need tag numbers. We can get those from a license plate camera, and if you have like we were talking about a little while ago, if you have one of those at the beginning of your subdivision, if a burglary occurs in your subdivision, we'll have a tag number in all likelihood because almost all burglars are in a car. There are some areas where we have a lot of burglars on foot, but most burglars, about 70% of burglars, are in a car. So it'll give us a starting point. We can figure it out. We can run the tag. We can figure out if it's a stolen car, who it belongs to, and do a little bit of research. Tag numbers give us leads. Faces give us convictions. So if we have a tag number that you got from your license plate recognition camera at the beginning of your neighborhood, and then you have a security camera at your house set up like I show you in just a second, we'll have a face. A face gives us a conviction. So the tag gives us a lead, a face gives us a conviction. Clothing, believe it or not, clothing is really cool. People have the same shoes. You know, they may have different shirt and pants on, but they always have the same shoes. So if we can get clothing, specific clothing, we often, when we develop the lead and do the search warrant on the suspect's home, we often find the very same clothes that he's wearing in his closet or in his drawers. So that's what we need. So how do we get that? We need tag numbers, faces, and clothing. We've got a community program where you can register your video cameras with us. If a crime happens in your area, we will call you and we'll be able to get your video footage and see if we can develop a lead or get information that we can get a tag number, a face, or clothing. That's a voluntary system. You can go to our website and you can register that. The only thing that does, it doesn't give us access to your cameras. It just gives us a lead so that if something happens in your area, we'll email you or call you and ask you for your video footage if you would be willing to give it to us. How you actually get these pieces of evidence for us is you exploit what we're terming a bottleneck. A bottleneck is something that somebody has to pass to either get into your neighborhood or get into your house. So if you have one entrance and one exit, that's a bottleneck. If they're coming into your house in a car, then we want a camera there to get that tag number, to develop that lead. It doesn't have to be a license plate recognition camera because those are expensive. And we'll happily help you guys. If you're thinking about getting a security system, you can contact a precinct and they will actually help you do that. We've got these tips on our website as well. you guys have helped us solve some very heinous crimes because you had cameras and you just happened to have them pointed at the roadway, and we happened to get a little clue from a car, and we were able to solve some cool things. This one was the best one right here. That was a good one too. But point is, if you're thinking about improving your system, getting a system, or if you want us to review what you have, we will help you help us develop leads. People spend a lot of money on security systems, and really, the people that sell them to you really don't know what develops leads for us and what develops convictions for us. Potential future technology. We're going to go real quick because I think I got about 3 minutes. School zone speed enforcement. Basically, those are cameras. They don't really look like this all the time. That's one version. It looks like an old phone booth almost. But basically, what we have found in studying this is that when you put these in place and you educate your community, which we do for like 45 days, we don't write tickets, we just educate. The average speed drops 11 miles an hour in your school zones. And this was prompted by the fatality that we had down in Mableton on VMH from the crossing guard, which was witnessed by a lot of children. That was a very ugly day. Real-Time Crime Center. This will wrap up three items in one. The Real-Time Crime Center, the machine learning cameras and alerts, and shot detection. What a Real-Time Crime Center is, you can see all these screens. What a Real-Time Crime Center does is it brings in cameras voluntarily from people who wish to share their cameras with us. Rarely would we take a camera from a house. That doesn't make any sense. What we're talking about is the stadium. We're talking about the KSU stadium. We're talking about our traffic cameras. We're talking about apartment complexes that are having problems with crime. They can join voluntarily if they wish to. What happens is we tell the system what dispatches we would like activity on. For example, we would want activity on a shooting. So we tell the system, hey, if a 911 comes in, 911 call comes in, and it's a shooting, we want the system to do this. We want it to identify the 4 closest cameras. We want it to rewind those cameras. We can tell it 5-7 minutes, and we want it to start playing automatically. So our real-time crime operators would sit there, watch, and then relay any information they see to an officer in the field. We've been watching this for years too. What we're seeing now is there's a lot of competition in this field. The prices are coming down, and the agility and the creativity of these young companies is incredible. Right now, we can do this so that every apartment complex in Cobb County that wanted to do this could afford it. So your areas that don't have all that much money, but they have high crime, they could actually afford to join this. I'm going to give you 2 examples real quick of what a Real-Time Crime Center did in Tyler, Texas. They've had one since 2012. They get a dispatch of a stolen car. That's all it is. The real-time operator, who's very smart, is like, hey, I'm going to call the victim real quick. Calls the victim real quick, gets her tag number, then she puts the tag number into the database for the license plate recognition system that I talked about earlier, so that if that car passes one of their license plate recognition cameras, it would alert a police officer. She did that while the officers are driving to the scene to take the report. Before the officer gets done with the report, an LPR, a license plate recognition camera, alerts an officer, the car is right here. They surround the guy, they get the car back, they arrest the driver before the report is even taken. They had the same thing happen with the shooting, except for it was cooler. They had a shooting in a complex. They reviewed the cameras quickly while the officers are coming to it. The officers get there, they're taking the report. They see a white vehicle with no tag. They took the tag off. It's weird. The license plate recognition stuff that I'm talking about does a lot more than what I just told you. But one of the things it does, you can actually, they call it vehicle fingerprinting. You can put the make and model of the vehicle that you're looking for and anything unique about the vehicle. No tag. It's just, hey, it has a roof rag. It has a pink bumper sticker on the right rear, whatever it is. And so they had a white vehicle with no tag. They knew the make and model. They put that in there. It had some unique feature. They were able to identify that vehicle within just a few minutes. They identified it from previous scans when it actually had the tag on there, like 3 days before, if that makes sense. They then took the tag, they put it back in as an alert. And when they did that, I think it was 19 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, it alerted, told an officer, hey, here's the shooting suspect that just occurred 19 minutes ago. They pulled him over, all the guys were in the car, the gun was in the car, and they were able to make an arrest. In the old days, our detectives would have to go down there. They would have to go into the video camera, see if anybody could operate it. And most of the time they can't. Now this is not even a joke. Most of the time they don't understand how to operate it because they never use it. It usually takes us 2 or 3 days to get video footage. It would have taken us 2 or 3 days to actually get that white vehicle lookout. And then by then, the gun's in a river. All the guys that were in that car that day, who knows who they were that day. It's a very difficult thing for them to prove. But when you get the car 19 minutes later with the gun and the same 3 guys in it, it's an incredible day. Those are the types of things that we want to do. You love the media, they don't mean any harm, but this is how it was termed in an article. Commissioners to consider countywide surveillance center. That's not true. It's not a surveillance center. It's a place where people who wish to can give us access to their cameras so that if something dangerous or violent happens in their community, we can get some intelligence and get it to the officers very, very quickly, days earlier than we could have without it. That's basically what it is. Machine learning, basically what that is, you're not supposed to be in a park after dark. Oh, I'll give you an example. We had our parks had burglaries over and over and over just now in your district, Commissioner, and we couldn't catch him. We made a homemade camera, basically, that would alert us if it saw motion. And it would tell us, hey, there's a guy in here during these hours, go check him out. You know, it didn't really work like we wanted it to, but the bottom line is they are making cameras now that can recognize a human being. We could literally put a camera out there and say, hey, if you see a human being past 9 o'clock p.m. but before 5:30 a.m., please alert our officers. It's that simple in this area because of this crime trend. That's what is coming and what looks promising. Concerns, questions, and answers, and then I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Gambrill. Yes, sir. The question was, I skipped over gunshot recognition, and he was asking me, do we have the intent to use gunshot recognition? And I think possibly also wondered why I skipped it. I skipped it just in the essence of time. But yes, sir, we are very interested in gunshot detection. We have areas of our county that are clearly our leaders in gunshots and aggravated assaults and homicides. And yes, we want to have gunshot detection as a police department. We're very interested in it. It's another one of those things that is maturing. As the industry becomes more competitive and more creative, we are becoming more and more interested. So yes, sir, we are interested in that. And I was going to explain how it works and all that stuff. But basically, essentially, it's an automated system that will call 911 for us very, very quickly when it hears gunshots. The newer ones, instead of calling 911, it'll ship it right to the officers' computers and right to our real-time crime center. Those are the ones that we're kind of concentrating on right now. Chief will answer that. The question was, how many police officers are we down? I'll stand close to you so he can hear the answer.
2 years ago, the commissioners were gracious enough to raise our manpower level by 2 groups of 40, so 2 blocks of 40. So about 2 years ago, if you count those 2 blocks of 40, we were down almost between 90 and 100 officers, okay? We're about halfway through that list. Now, I would like to have them all full, but if we're going to be totally honest, if you watch everything on television, we don't have necessarily the most popular profession in the world right now. But we are having a lot of younger applicants that are coming in, especially from the Northeast United States. Law enforcement officers and military from Puerto Rico seem to be interested. So we are actually making some strides, some gains in that area. We still have slots, so if you got a relative or loved one that wants to be a police officer, send them our way. but we are making some progress in there. To get down to exact number, it's going to be, my number fluctuates every day by if somebody retires that day or not. I can hire, as of yesterday, I can hire 14 police officers by the end of September. And then at that, I will receive 38 more positions and be able to hire off of that.
Thank you, Chief. You had a question about gangs. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead. I'll be honest with you, that may be the best question I've ever had at one of these public meetings, because that is actually probably our biggest threat. I'll say this, though, we got really great news. The databases that we use for all of this are what's called CJIS compliant. That's another acronym that stands for Criminal Justice Information Services. They have minimum guidelines which are pretty stringent that have to be met, including encryption and all this different stuff that makes it more difficult than most to break into. In addition to that, you might have read this, but our commissioners are right now funding additional cybersecurity as we speak to combat against what you've seen around the country with private entities and public entities. Here's what's interesting, though. Seems like everybody's okay with Delta using facial recognition and Bank of America using facial recognition. And all the stuff you got on your phone right now, if you say some weird thing like Taylor guitar strings, it'll pop up on your Facebook within a couple of days because it thinks you want to buy Taylor guitar strings. This has happened to us at my house, and it's very freaky. But we sign our life away when we get a cell phone and when we get these apps. And the privacy that we give up is crazy. The difference between them and us is we are super, super careful with your privacy. But I do grant you that it is a very difficult field to combat, but we are proactively, as a county, taking a stance against that and funding, and they're great. They train us I just had to take the thing yesterday. They train us how to recognize phishing emails and how to combat cybersecurity. They train us regularly, and they even try to trick us. They'll send us an email that has a link in it. That's our IS department just testing us to see if we're doing the right thing. And if we fail it, guess what? We have to take the class again. So great question, and I couldn't agree with you more. It is a problem, and we are proactively combating it. I'm gonna go back to this patient gentleman right here who, yes, sir. Everybody in Metro Atlanta has problems with gangs. Probably our biggest tool, if I'm just totally honest, and I would love to hear the opinion of the rest of the room. Our license plate recognition system is probably the single biggest fighter, I guess. Most of our alerts on these stolen cars and wanted people, a great many of them are gang related. A great many of them are organized crime related. A great many of our shootings are gang related. We know that. And so we do have a problem with that. We have a gang act in the state. We try to utilize that gang act. We have one of the largest gang units in the state, if not the largest. We used to be the largest. We are extremely proactive with our gang investigations. We contact gang members. We have consensual encounters with them. We talk to them. We try to help them. We try to rehabilitate them through many programs with our courts. They're usually young people that get mixed up in bad situations, bad family situations and things like that. So yes, it's a very big problem. Yes, we're doing several creative things. And sometimes we have to take harsh measures like charging them under the Gang Act, which is a pretty tough hill to climb for these young people because the punishment for that is very severe. But we only do that when we see a great number of crimes committed by these people, the violent crime, the gang activity, all that stuff. It has to be serious for us to utilize that. But we work hand in hand with the sheriff's office. We work hand in hand with the DA's office to make sure that we're all on board and doing the same thing. There's two things that I would love to see at the state level. That's one. That does help us because it gives us two shots at the tags. Plus, if I'm a patrol officer and I'm looking for a car and he's coming at me, I have to do this and try to see if it's the right tag, and it's almost impossible. It's distracting. It's dangerous while you're driving. So that front tag being available is an advantage. The bigger thing to me, most states don't have the drive-out tags that we do. We have little bitty lettering on it. Now, our LPRs can read those most of the time, or not most of the time, probably about a third of the time, I would guess. If they would go with a bigger paper tag, we could read every one of those. And those, we've gotten alerts on those and gotten suspects, offenders, off of the drive-out tags, which I don't know of any other company besides Flock that can do that, but we have 53 cameras. We pay, the county pays for that. Well, actually, we've had some help with the federal government too. They pay for 25 of them. I don't know, 15 or 25. But thank you. What he said was that he appreciates the police department. He also works for the county. And I'll say this, and I want to give Commissioner Gambrill some time, so we're gonna, if anybody has any more questions, they can get with me afterwards. I'll say this, that means a lot to us. We do have a lot of people that pat us on the back right now, but I will tell you this, the group that you see in here largely is not really, we're sitting at a desk all day, and thank you for thanking me. But I would ask you, when you see a guy like him in the back that's out on the road actually doing the work in the field, just tell them that you appreciate them and you love them, because they need it right now. They really do. So thank you for that.